Hello everybody and welcome to the homestead. So I was about to start canning or preserving my butternut squash. Then I thought let me record so that you guys can see what I actually do as a newbie canner or food preserver. I was very reluctant to do this video because there's a lot of information out there related to preserving and canning. So I want you to just remember that I'm definitely a newbie, but all the information that I have learned is from a group called Presto Canner South Africa. So they share information that is really related to the South African climate and conditions. They actually try out some of these things before they put out information on that group. So yeah, whatever that I'm going to be doing here has been tried by experts. I will be using this canner. It's called a Presto Canner. I got mine on Amazon and it took about 2 weeks to arrive. It comes with this manual. You guys, I've read this manual from front to back, and you should too if you do decide to get it. I got this canner for about 3,700 including shipping, but there is a South African company that makes canners. They are quite heavy from what I've heard, but then they are obviously a little bit affordable, and you know that if something happens to your canner, you'll be able to get a replacement as soon as yesterday because they have offices in South Africa. So I am going to be using these jars to can. These are about 500 ml jars, and I know that a lot of people think that you can only can using the console jars, the ones with the 2 lids, but these ones also work just fine. And I'm actually reusing these jars. Before we moved to the homestead, I used to keep all my mayonnaise jars, and now I get to actually reuse them. They will have these lids. So I've already cleaned up my jars with some warm water and salt. And dry canning actually means that I'm not going to be adding any liquid in here. Usually dry canning is used for meat, but I also found that when you are preserving pumpkins or potatoes, it's also quite useful because then they don't really become super mushy. When filling up your jars, you want to ensure that there is about 1 inch of head space in the jars. That is the recommended space. I've never really looked up to find out why they need 1 inch of head space, but yeah, I just follow the instructions. I also try to pack them really nice and tight. And then you can use this little tool to check the head space, like so. And you can also use it to remove bubbles when you are canning with liquids, but I'm not using any liquids, so I will not be expecting any bubbles. Now that we've filled up our jars, it's time to close them up and try our best to disinfect and keep this as clean as possible. But because they are going inside a pressure canner, chances are most of the bacteria or germs, I don't know what to call it, would die because of the heat. But right now I am going to be using apple cider vinegar. I use any type of vinegar to kill any germs around my jars, and I just then wipe the rim as well as the lids just to make sure that there's nothing going in there. So the idea is really to just wipe the rim of the jar so that there is nothing that could stop, the lid from sitting nicely. Then I take one of the lids that I'm going to be using. I dip the whatever that I have. Right now I'm using paper towels to wipe. Just wipe, and then I don't touch them inside, then I just close. I don't tighten like really hard, just enough. I don't know how much strength you need to use. I do the same with all the jars. Just wipe and remove anything that could be sitting around the rim that would stop the lid from closing. Take my nice clean lid. I've already boiled this, so they're relatively clean. Then I just tighten. Once this is done, it's now time for us to prepare our canner. So this is the canner that we're going to use, and it uses a dial gauge. So these numbers are the PSI, which is the pounds of pressure that is going to be accumulated when we start canning. I know what PSI my gauge has to stand on because I've checked the altitude. This booklet, the instruction booklet, comes with all the information that is really required, but like I said, some of the information I'm getting it from the Facebook group that does canning for South Africans, and I know that I need to can this based on my altitude at 11 psi. So I just have to make sure that the stove is at the right amount of heat to hit that, and when I start canning I have to make sure that the little arrow goes at least to like 10, and then I reduce the heat and then allow it to reach that 11 nicely. So now let's add some water in here and add the jars. So first things first, you need to add water inside your canner before you can start. No matter how much you are canning or how many bottles are going to be in there, you need to add water. And this canner requires that you add 3 liters of water, or just enough to cover the bottle. Also, the water has to be warm or hot-ish, but not boiling. So I am just using water from the geyser, which is going to be warm enough for the canner. After, you need to add a canning rack. This is an important part of canning because you don't want your jars to be sitting at the bottom of the canner. So you need to add one of this. This is called a canning rack. You can actually use these racks to separate jars if you are canning more than one layer of jars. There, sitting nicely. Then after that, I'm just going to add my jars. You can see the water is right at the bottom. Sorry for the noise. The water doesn't cover the jars. This is not the water bathing method. Remember, it is not the water that is preserving or sealing these jars. It is actually the steam that's going to do the magic. Hence, there is no need to fill up water in here. After, you just need to close the canner nice and tight. I find that this is quite easy to close. Oh, it has a nice rubber thingy in here that holds it quite nicely, so you don't really have to worry about it being loose. But if it starts being loose, then you know that there's something wrong with your canner, I think. You want to close it well enough that these parts are like parallel to each other, and then it's secured. So I'm just going to switch this on and let it build pressure to 11 psi. Then I am looking for a nice steady stream here of steam for about 10 minutes. It needs to like come out nice and steady for 10 minutes. Then after that, I'm going to put this weighted gauge, which is going to regulate the pressure in here. And then after that, that's when I'm going to start the countdown of how long we are going to can this. We are going to leave them in here for about 50 minutes. And I'll show you how it's going to be moving over here. So the steam has started coming through, but it's not a steady stream yet. So we'll wait just a little bit. So the stream is nice and steady now, so we can now add the weighting gauge to regulate the pressure. The air vent now is also up. This means that there is pressure inside the canner. When there's no pressure, it goes down, and now it's gone up. So we have reached our desired pressure, which is supposed to be 11, but now it's at 12. So I'm just going to reduce the heat over here, put it to the lowest setting. Hopefully that's gonna help and regulate it nicely. Oh, by the way, if this goes down lower than the 11, then we have to start the process all over again. So we have to make sure that we keep it right there at 11. Can you see that it's going back to the 11? Okay, so it's been keeping the right pressure 11, but yeah, this stove is not that great, so I kind of have to watch it. Apparently with the weighted one, you don't actually have to watch the pressure, but with this gauge you have to watch it. It's best done on a weekend when you have nothing else to do but watch your canner do its thing. So we've managed to get to the 50 minutes, and I was watching it the whole time. It was it was canning, but I think it's gonna be fine. Usually when the pressure goes too high, nothing actually happens to your food. It doesn't get spoiled or anything like that, but it might get bent. So that's what I'm worried about, because at some point it got to like 12 pounds. So we'll see what happens. We'll open it together and witness the miracle that is happening here. Anyway, now we just have to wait for it to completely go down. This needs to get to 0, and for this air vent to also flatten now. Then that is going to let us know that there is no pressure in there anymore, and we can safely open. So I waited for forever until this had cooled down. I am just going to open. So this is literally one of those videos where people are busy unboxing things. I'm about to unbox my Presto Canner. Okay. I'm also trying to be far away so that my face doesn't get caught in the crossfire if there is anything that might happen. It's so much drama. Okay. So this is what they're looking like inside. I kind of feel like I forgot to tell you this, guys, or maybe I mentioned it and didn't actually say how much time I was going to can this for. It was actually supposed to be 55 minutes. So yeah, 55 minutes is the recommended time for butternut squash. So now let's take it out and start cooling it down on a flat surface without disturbing them. So I'm going to put my bottles here on this countertop, but I don't want the temperature of this stone to be too different from the bottles because they might crack because they're not completely cooled down. So I'm just going to put something. Okay, so I'm going to put a towel on here so that we can just balance out the temperatures. And I am going to use these tongs to take the jars out. Guys, this is so important. Do not touch them with your hands because they're extremely hot when you take them out. So let's use this. So this is it, you guys. We have canned with our Presto Canner and no one died. So I think this is such a useful skill to learn whether you're homesteading or you're not homesteading. Preserving food is just important. So for example, if you like butternut squash or you like any type of vegetable that can be preserved, you can buy it when it's in season. Usually it's most affordable then you don't have to buy the vegetable when it's out of season because then it's expensive. So just learn the skills. I think they're really useful. I'm going to make more videos like this so that you can see how you can preserve all the different types of vegetables. One thing I was really worried about is the butternut squash actually getting burnt, and some of it got burnt. It's not a lot of them that got burnt, just a couple, and that is because I used high pressure at some point. I just could not get my gas stove to be at the right amount of pressure. And then another thing is you can see that it's reduced. This is actually not a problem at all. It's really reduced, but there's still liquid inside. So imagine if I'd actually added more liquid in here, that would be just a lot of liquid. So dry canning is a much better option for your potatoes or anything that actually gets mushy, pumpkins and all that other stuff. So yeah, guys, this is it. Nothing is hectic about canning. It's actually quite enjoyable. If you do it on a weekend, this could become a crazy hobby and your pantry will be so full of this stuff. We've been eating food from like a year or two already because I've got a smaller canner that I used to use before and I can still use it. But then now that I've got a bigger one, I get to go crazy and can these big jars. So yeah, and you can use any jars that you want as long as they're closed tightly. Don't stress, just go get that honey jar and put in some things in there and it's ready to can. I hope you liked this. Please do share and subscribe to our channel if you liked this video because there will be more. Thanks for watching.